Captain Li Wujin stood on the bridge of the mining ship New Seoul watching the stars through the big window in front of him. The ship was moving slowly through the asteroid belt near Kepler 442, looking for rare metals that Earth needed badly. Wujin had been doing this job for 10 years and he knew space was dangerous, but today felt different. The warning alarms started screaming and red lights flashed everywhere. Communications officer Kim So-min turned around from her station with fear. In her eyes, "Captain, we have multiple ships approaching fast," she said. Her voice was shaking. "They are not responding to our messages." Wujin looked at the screen and saw 6 huge warships coming toward them. The ships were dark blue with sharp edges, and they looked like giant knives flying through space. He recognized them immediately. Vorthan Empire vessels, the most feared ships in the galaxy. The Vorthans had been conquering worlds for hundreds of years, and they never showed mercy to anyone. Everyone on the bridge knew what this meant. The Vorthan Empire had been expanding their territory by force for centuries. They would attack any ship they found, and either kill everyone or take them as slaves. Humans had only been in space for 50 years, and they were still considered a weak young race by most aliens. Engineer Park Min-ho ran onto the bridge. "Captain, should we try to run?" he asked. But Wujin shook his head. The Vorthan ships were much faster than the New Seoul, and they were already too close. "There was nowhere to hide in the empty space around the asteroids. We surrender," Wujin said into the communication system. "This is Captain Li Wujin of the human vessel New Seoul. We are a peaceful mining ship. We have no weapons. We surrender." The response came quickly in a deep alien voice that made everyone shiver. "Your surrender means nothing, human. You will be questioned about your homeworld location. If you cooperate, you will die quickly. If you resist, you will wish you had never been born." The Vorthan ship surrounded the New Seoul like hunters surrounding their prey. Bright blue beams shot out and grabbed the human ship, holding it tight so it could not move. Then the aliens used their teleporter technology to appear on the human ship in flashes of blue light. The Vorthan soldiers were tall and powerful with blue skin that looked like metal. Their eyes glowed red in the dark, and they carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They wore black armor that covered their whole bodies except for their faces, which looked like they had never smiled in their entire lives. The leader of the Vorthan soldiers was Commander Thelvis, who was even taller than the others. His red eyes burned like fire as he looked at the humans. "On the bridge, you will tell us everything about your homeworld," he said in English that sounded wrong, coming from his alien mouth. "Earth location, defenses, population, everything." Captain Wujin stepped forward. "I am the captain of this ship. I am responsible for my crew. If you want information, you deal with me." He looked Thelvis in the eyes without fear. Even though the alien was twice his size, the other crew members, Park Min-ho, Kim So-min, and navigator Choi Dae-hyun, watched their captain with respect and worry. Thelvis smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who enjoyed hurting others. "You humans are so predictable," he said. "Always trying to protect each other. It makes you weak." He pointed at 2 of his soldiers. "Take the captain to the interrogation room. Make the others watch what happens when humans refuse to cooperate." The Vorthan soldiers grabbed Wujin by his arms and dragged him toward the door. The captain did not struggle or cry out. He looked back at his crew and said, "Remember who we are. Remember what humans can do when we have to." His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of determination. They took Wujin to a room that the Vorthans had set up with their torture equipment. The walls were covered with alien machines that looked like they were designed to cause pain. There were metal tables with straps and needles and devices that glowed with evil light. The air smelled like fear and electricity. Thelvis activated the ship's communication system so that the crew could see everything that happened to their captain on the screens around the ship. He wanted them to watch so they would be scared and tell him what he wanted to know. This was how the Vorthans had broken every other species they had conquered. The first machine they used on Wujin was called a neural disruptor. It sent electric shocks directly into his brain, making every nerve in his body scream with pain. Most aliens would beg for mercy after just a few seconds, but Wujin gritted his teeth and stayed silent. His body shook and sweat poured down his face, but he did not make a sound. On the bridge, Kim So-min started crying as she watched her captain suffer. Park Min-ho hit the wall with his fist, wishing he could help, but knowing the Vorthons would kill him if he tried. Choi Dae-hyun memorized every Vorthon face, promising himself he would remember this moment forever. Where is Earth? Delvas demanded as he increased the power of the neural disruptor. How many ships do humans have? What weapons do you possess? Woojin said nothing. The only sound he made was his heavy breathing as he fought against the terrible pain. The Vorthons tried different machines next. They used pain amplifiers that made small hurts feel like being burned alive. They used memory extractors that tried to pull information directly from his brain. They used sonic torture that made sounds so terrible they could drive most beings insane for 3 days. This continued. Woojin endured pain that would have killed most species within hours. His body was covered with burns and cuts. His voice became hoarse from screaming. But still he told the aliens nothing about Earth. He would not betray his home world or his people, no matter what they did to him. The crew watched helplessly as their captain suffered. They took turns staying awake so someone would always be watching, always witnessing what the Vorthons were doing. They promised each other they would remember every detail so they could tell Earth what had happened if they ever escaped. On the 4th day, something strange happened. Woojin stopped screaming. The torture machines were still running, and the pain was still there. But the captain lay on the metal table with his eyes closed and his breathing steady. Thelvas thought the human had finally broken, but he was wrong. Something had changed in Woojin's mind. The constant pain had forced his brain to adapt, to find new ways to think and feel. The agony was still there, but now it felt like fuel for his anger instead of something that could destroy him. His eyes opened and they burned with cold fury that made even Thelva step backward. The Vorthons had made their first mistake. They had given a human time to adapt, and humans were very good at adapting to things that should have killed them. They had tortured Woojin for 3 days thinking it would break him, but instead they had created something they did not understand, a human who had learned to use pain as a weapon against his enemies. The new soul arrived at Earth 3 weeks after escaping from the Vorthon warship. Captain Lee Woojin stood on the bridge watching his home planet grow larger on the screen. The blue and green world had never looked more beautiful, but he knew it was in terrible danger. The Vorthon Empire would not ignore what had happened to their ship. Earth Defense Command received their emergency signal immediately. Admiral Jin Hyun-soo himself contacted the new soul within minutes of their arrival. Captain Woojin, report your status and explain your extended absence from scheduled mining operations. His voice was calm, but Woojin could hear the worry underneath. Admiral, we have an urgent situation. Woojin replied. The Vorthon Empire has entered human space. They captured our ship, tortured crew members, and threatened Earth itself. We escaped, but they will be back with more ships. He sent the recordings from their ship cameras showing everything that had happened. The silence on the communication channel lasted for several long minutes. When Admiral Jin spoke again, his voice was completely different. Captain Doc at Station Alpha immediately. President Yoon Seo-young has called an emergency session of the Terran Council. Your testimony will be required. Within hours, the footage from the new soul was being studied by every military expert on Earth. The images of Woojin's torture spread through the government buildings like wildfire. Defense Minister Park Jin-young watched the recordings 3 times before calling for immediate military mobilization. The Terran Council met in emergency session. That same day, representatives from every human colony and military district gathered in the Great Chamber on Luna Base. President Yoon Seo-young stood before them holding a data pad with the torture footage. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. Fellow humans, she began, we face the greatest threat in our species' history. The Vorthon Empire has declared war on humanity through their actions. They have tortured our people, killed our citizens, and threatened our home world. The question before us is simple. Do we fight or do we surrender? Captain. Woojin was called to testify before the council. He walked to the center of the chamber still, bearing scars from his torture. His voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of his suffering. They did not just want information, he told the assembled leaders. They wanted to break the human spirit. They wanted to prove we were weak. The captain described every detail of his capture, the torture methods, the alien technology, and most importantly, the Vorthan weaknesses he had discovered. They are strong, he said, but they are not creative. They follow patterns and procedures. They cannot adapt. When something unexpected happens, Admiral Jin stood up, Captain. What do you recommend as our response? Wu Jin looked around the chamber at the faces of Earth's leaders. His answer was simple and direct. We make them pay for every drop of human blood they have spilled. We show them why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, when we are angry. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Some council members wanted to negotiate. Others suggested hiding or running away. But the footage of Wu Jin's torture had awakened something in the human spirit that had been sleeping for too long. The final vote was unanimous. Earth would go to war. But this would not be the kind of war the Vorthans expected. General Park Jin-young stood before a room full of military planners and strategic experts. The Vorthan Empire has conquered over 100 worlds, he said, using the same methods every time. Overwhelming force, massive fleets, direct confrontation. Every species that fought them that way lost. Dr. Bei Suji, the government's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying the torture footage carefully. She made a discovery that changed everything about their war plans. The Vorthans showed genuine surprise at Captain Wu Jin's endurance, she reported. Their torture methods are designed for species with normal pain thresholds. They have no experience with human resilience. The war planners began to understand. General Park pointed to star maps showing Vorthan territory. Their empire is huge, but that makes it impossible to defend everywhere at once. They rule through fear and overwhelming strength. If we can take away their sense of invincibility, we can turn their own size against them, Captain. Wu Jin was asked to help design the human response. His experience with Vorthan technology and psychology made him the perfect advisor. We do not fight their ships with our ships, he explained. We do not attack their strength. We attack what they think is safe. We make them afraid to leave their homeworlds. The plan that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of building massive fleets to fight the Vorthans directly, Earth would create small teams of highly trained specialists. These teams would infiltrate fourth-hand space and wage war from the shadows. They would strike at supply lines, communication networks, and command structures. Dr. Bei contributed crucial intelligence about Vorthan biology and psychology. They are pack hunters, she explained. They feel strongest when working together in large groups, but they become confused and frightened when isolated. This fear response can be triggered by attacking their sense of safety and predictability. The human military began preparing for a completely new kind of warfare. Special forces units were trained in alien languages, survival techniques, and infiltration methods. Engineers developed new technologies specifically designed to work against Vorthan equipment. Scientists studied captured alien weapons and armor to find weaknesses. Meanwhile, intelligence teams led by Colonel Nam Yu-jin began reaching out to other species that had been conquered by the Vorthan Empire. Many alien races still remembered their freedom and hated their conquerors. These species became willing allies, providing information, safe houses, and local support for human operations. The preparation took months, but finally, Earth was ready. Admiral Jin stood before the assembled Special Forces teams in a briefing room. You are about to begin the most important mission in human history, he told them. You will not be fighting for territory or resources. You will be fighting to show the galaxy that humans cannot be conquered or broken. Captain Wu Jin addressed the teams as well. Remember what they did to me, he said, but do not let anger make you careless. Use your minds as well as your weapons. The Vorthans think they understand warfare, but they have never fought humans before. They are about to learn the difference between conquering the weak and facing the strong. The first human ships left Earth orbit on a cold morning in March. They were small, fast vessels designed for stealth rather than combat. Each ship carried a team of specialists who had trained for months to become ghosts in space. Their mission was simple: spread fear throughout the Vorthan Empire, as the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace. President Yoon made a public announcement to all of Earth. "This is not a war of conquest," she declared. "This is a war of justice." The Vorthans made a terrible mistake when they tortured Captain Wu Jin. They awakened something in humanity that should have been left sleeping. Now they will learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. When we decide to fight, the war had begun and the Vorthan Empire had no idea what was coming for them. Sergeant Lee Jinsu crouched in the shadows of an alien building on the Vorthan world called Cathara Prime. His team of 6 humans had been on the planet for 3 weeks, studying their targets and waiting for the perfect moment to strike the Vorthans, who lived in the city below, had no idea that death was watching them from the darkness. Alpha Team was one of 24 human special forces units that had spread across Vorthan space like invisible poison. Each team had the same mission: destroy the Empire's ability to function from within. They were not there to fight battles or capture territory. They were there to teach the Vorthans the meaning of fear. Jinsu activated his communication device and spoke quietly to his team. Target confirmed. Governor Vekthar will be attending the ceremony tomorrow as scheduled. Security will be light because they think this world is completely safe. He smiled grimly. Tomorrow they learn how wrong they are. The ceremony was celebrating another Vorthan conquest, the enslavement of a peaceful species called the Rilani, who had never hurt anyone. Governor Vekthar would be making a speech about Vorthan's superiority while standing on a platform surrounded by thousands of alien citizens. It was the perfect opportunity. Corporal O Minji was the team's sniper, and she had been studying the ceremony location for days. "Captain, the wind patterns are predictable, and I have 3 different escape routes planned. The shot will be clean and precise." "Governor, Vekthar will not even know what killed him." But Jinsu had a different plan. "This is not about just killing one governor," he told his team. "This is about sending a message that will spread fear across their entire empire. We make this look like something impossible, something that will give them nightmares." The next day, Governor Vekthar stood before the crowd giving his speech about Vorthan power and glory. He talked about how no species could resist their empire and how humans were just another weak race that would soon be enslaved. The thousands of aliens in the crowd listened with fear and hatred in their eyes. What Vekthar did not know was that half of his security guards were not actually Vorthans at all. Specialist Han Gibeom and Private Kang Hyunwoo had replaced 2 real guards 3 days earlier, using disguises so perfect that even other Vorthans could not tell the difference. The real guards were buried in the desert outside the city at exactly noon when the governor's speech reached its peak about Vorthan invincibility. The 2 disguised humans moved with deadly precision. Gibeom activated a device that jammed all communications in the area, while Hyunwoo released a cloud of sleeping gas that knocked out every real guard within 50 meters. Jinsu and Minji appeared from the crowd, moving like ghosts through the confused aliens. Corporal Park Donghyun created a diversion by starting small explosions around the platform, making everyone think they were under attack by rebels. The plan worked perfectly. In less than 2 minutes, Governor Vekthar was dead along with his entire command staff. The humans vanished into the chaos they had created, leaving behind no trace except for one thing they had arranged: the bodies to spell out a message in the Vorthan language. Remember Wujin. The news of the assassination spread across the empire within hours. A Vorthan governor had been killed on one of their safest worlds by enemies who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The security footage showed nothing useful, just confusion and smoke. The investigation found no clues about how the attack had been planned or executed. Emperor Velthar himself watched the reports from his palace on the imperial capital world. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. "Cathara Prime has been under our control for 50 years. The population is completely pacified. How did rebels even reach the planet?" General Kethimore, the Emperor's military advisor, studied the footage carefully. "Your Majesty, this was not done by local rebels. The precision, the timing, the technology used. This was a professional military operation. Someone with advanced training and equipment planned this attack." Meanwhile, on dozens of other Vorthan worlds, similar attacks were happening. Lieutenant Nam Suman led Delta Team in destroying the Empire's primary communication relay on Vorthax. 7 Staff Sergeant Yoon Tae-hyung took out an entire class of military officers. At the Vorthon War Academy on Zelkor Prime, Corporal Lee Hyejin systematically eliminated the leadership of 3 different mining colonies. Each attack was different, but they all carried the same message. Remember Wu Jin? The humans had learned from studying Vorthon psychology that fear spreads fastest when people do not understand what they are facing. The mysterious nature of the attacks made them even more terrifying. The Vorthons tried everything to stop the human teams. They increased security at important locations. They changed their communication codes. They even started moving their leaders to secret bunkers. But nothing worked. The humans seemed to know about every defensive measure before it was even implemented. What the Vorthons did not understand was that the humans had help from an unexpected source. The conquered alien species that the Empire had enslaved for centuries were eager to assist their new liberators. Rilani civilians provided safe houses, Zilani merchants smuggled equipment. Korthak rebels shared intelligence about Vorthon movements. Captain Bae Sunwoo led the intelligence-gathering operations that made all the attacks possible. His team had spent months learning alien languages and customs, becoming so good at disguising themselves that they could walk through Vorthon cities without being noticed. They built networks of allies among every conquered species. The economic impact of the attacks was devastating. Trade routes that had operated safely for hundreds of years now required massive military escorts. Supply ships refused to travel without protection. Colonies were demanding security forces that the Empire could not provide. The cost of maintaining control was becoming impossible, but the psychological impact was even worse. The Vorthons had built their entire identity around being the strongest species in the galaxy. They were the hunters who conquered everyone else. Now they were jumping at shadows, wondering if any civilian might be a disguised human operative. Governor Althek of Vorthon 6 sent a desperate message to the imperial capital, requesting emergency reinforcements. "We are under constant threat," he reported. "Strange accidents keep happening to our officials. Equipment fails at crucial moments. Our own citizens are acting suspicious. We need help immediately." The reply from Emperor Velthar was short and brutal. "There are no reinforcements available. Every world is under attack. You will handle your own security." With existing resources, the Empire had been stretched too thin by the human campaign. There simply were not enough soldiers to protect every important location. Sergeant Jinsu received new orders from Earth Command while hiding in an abandoned building on Cathera Prime. The message was encrypted and brief. Phase 2 begins now. Target priority shifted to military production facilities. Signed, Admiral Jin Jinsu smiled as he read the orders. The humans had spent 6 months teaching the Vorthons to be afraid. Now it was time to take away their ability to fight back. The war was about to enter a new and even more deadly phase. That night, Alpha Team destroyed the main weapons factory on Cathara Prime. The explosion could be seen from orbit, and the fire burned for 3 days. When Vorthon investigators examined the wreckage, they found another message carved into the twisted metal. "Remember Wu Jin, and now you will remember his people." Across the Empire, similar attacks began hitting military. Target starship construction facilities were sabotaged. Weapons research centers were destroyed. Training academies were infiltrated, and their instructors eliminated. The Vorthon military machine was being systematically dismantled by enemies they could not catch. Emperor Velthar called an emergency meeting of his war council. "The humans are destroying our ability to fight," he told his advisors. "How many ships have we lost to sabotage this month? How many officers have been assassinated? How many facilities have been destroyed?" The numbers were horrifying. 43 ships sabotaged, 87 high-ranking officers killed, 16 major facilities destroyed. The empire that had conquered 100 worlds was being brought to its knees by 24 human teams. General Kethamor tried to sound confident. "Your Majesty, we will adapt our tactics. We will find these humans and eliminate them." But privately he knew the truth. The Vorthon Empire had never faced an enemy like this before. They had no idea how to fight ghosts who struck without warning and disappeared without a trace. The hunt was far from over, and the humans were just getting started. Emperor Velthar sat on his throne made of crystal from 100 conquered worlds, staring at reports that made no sense to him. The mighty Vorthon Empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries was falling apart, and he could not understand how it was happening so fast. The humans, who were supposed to be weak and primitive, were destroying everything he had built. The latest report was from Admiral Corthex, who commanded the Empire's remaining fleet. "Your Majesty, we have lost another 12 ships this week to sabotage," he said. Through the communication screen behind him, smoke was rising from what used to be a space station. "The humans are everywhere and nowhere. We cannot predict where they will strike next." Velthar threw the report. Across the room in rage, "One ship," he shouted. "One human mining vessel started this war. Now our entire empire is burning because of 24 human teams. How is this possible? How can so few do so much damage?" The answer was simple, but the Emperor could not accept it. The Vorthon Empire had been built on fear and overwhelming force. They had always been the predators hunting weaker species. Now, for the first time in their history, they were the prey, and they had no idea how to handle the reversal general. Cathamor entered the throne room carrying more bad news. "Your Majesty, the situation on Vorthax Prime has become critical. The human team there has destroyed our main military academy, along with the planetary defense grid. They killed 300 of our best young officers and disappeared before our reinforcements arrived. The psychological warfare was working perfectly. Captain Nam Yu-jin had led her team in what became known as the Academy Massacre. They had infiltrated the most secure military facility in the Empire and eliminated an entire generation of future Vorthon commanders. The message they left behind was written in the blood of their enemies. Remember Wu Jin. Remember his pain. Now feel your own." But the humans were not satisfied with just killing Vorthon leaders. They wanted to break the Empire's will to fight. Specialist Kim Ji-won had developed a new tactic that spread terror more effectively than any weapon she would capture. Vorthon officials alive and broadcast their confessions across the Empire communication networks. The broadcasts showed proud Vorthon commanders begging for their lives and admitting to war crimes against conquered species. Governor Theknar of Zelkor Prime sobbed on camera as he described the torture and murder of innocent civilians. Admiral Vorthak confessed to destroying entire planets just to prove Vorthon power. The proud empire was being humiliated in front of the entire galaxy. Trade had collapsed completely. Merchant ships refused to enter Vorthon space without massive military escorts that the Empire could no longer provide. Colony worlds were declaring independence faster than the Imperial fleet could respond. Supply lines that had operated for centuries were now impossible to maintain. The economic numbers were catastrophic. Finance Minister Zelthar presented his report to the Emperor with trembling hands. "Your Majesty, our military budget has increased by 4,000% in the last year. We are spending more money on security than on everything else combined. The treasury will be empty within 6 months. Even worse, the conquered species that had been enslaved for generations were rising in rebellion. The humans had armed and trained resistance groups. On dozens of worlds, the Rilani, who had been peaceful farmers, were now deadly guerrilla fighters. The Korthak, who had been broken by centuries of oppression, were sabotaging Vorthon facilities everywhere. Emperor Velthar walked to the great window of his palace and looked out at his capital city. Even here on the most secure world in the Empire, he could see signs of the collapse. Construction had stopped on new buildings because materials could not be shipped safely. Citizens were hoarding food and supplies, preparing for the worst. Military patrols marched through the streets, but everyone knew they were just for show. The Emperor remembered when Captain Li Wu-jin had been brought to him in chains 3 years ago. The human had looked so small and weak compared to Vorthon soldiers. Velthar had watched the torture sessions and laughed at the human's pathetic attempts to resist. Now that same species was bringing his empire to its knees. "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind him. Communication Director Vethran was standing in the doorway holding a data pad. "We have received another message from the humans. They are broadcasting on all frequencies across the Empire." The message appeared on every screen in the palace, showing Captain Nam Yu-jin standing in front of a burning Vorthon military base. "People of the galaxy," she said in perfect Vorthon language, "the empire that has enslaved you for centuries is dying. You have seen their leaders beg for mercy. You have watched their fleets burn. You have witnessed their cities fall. She held up a picture of Captain Wu Jin showing his scars from the torture. 3 years ago, they tortured one human for 3 days, thinking it would break our spirit. Instead, it taught us how to break theirs. The Vorthan Empire has learned what happens when you hurt a human and think we will forget. The broadcast continued with footage from dozens of successful human operations, exploding ships, burning facilities, dead governors and admirals. The message was clear. The Vorthons were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. They were the hunted, and their hunters were relentless. Emperor Velthar watched the broadcast with growing horror as the full scope of his defeat became clear. The humans had not just attacked his military forces. They had systematically destroyed his empire's ability to inspire fear. Without that fear, the conquered species were no longer afraid to rebel. The final part of the broadcast was the most devastating. Captain Nam held up a counter showing Vorthon casualties in the war. The number was staggering: over 1 million soldiers, officials and civilians killed by human operations. You tortured one of our people for 3 days, she said. We have been torturing your entire empire for... The surrender ceremony took place on neutral ground, a space station operated by the Galactic Trade Confederation. Emperor Velthar arrived with a massive escort, trying to maintain some dignity in defeat. The human delegation was just 5 people: Admiral Jin Hyunsu, General Park Jin-young, Dr. Bae Suji, President Yoon Seo-young, and Captain Lee Woo-jin. The contrast was deliberate and powerful. The Empire had sent hundreds of officials and guards. Earth had sent the people who had orchestrated their defeat, and the man whose suffering had started it all. You have brought the Empire to its knees, Velthar admitted through a translator. We underestimated your species. We seek terms for cessation of hostilities. President Yoon spoke calmly. The terms are simple: complete withdrawal from all conquered territories, reparations to enslaved species, dismantlement of your military forces, and you will never again attack any human vessel or colony. Those terms would end our empire, Velthar protested. Your empire ended the day you decided to torture one of our people, Admiral Jin replied. We're simply making it official. The negotiations lasted 3 days, the same length as Wu Jin's ordeal. The Vorthans tried to bargain, to maintain some dignity, to preserve some portion of their territory. The humans were immovable. They had demonstrated that they could destroy the empire entirely if they chose to. Peace on human terms was the only alternative to complete annihilation. When Velthar finally signed the surrender documents, he looked directly at Wu Jin. Your species is more dangerous than any we have encountered. How do we know you won't hunt us to extinction? Wu Jin, still bearing scars from his torture, smiled coldly. Because unlike you, we understand the difference between justice and cruelty. You have learned to fear us. That fear will keep the peace better than any treaty. The Vordan Empire officially dissolved 6 months later. Its former territories became independent worlds or joined the growing human alliance. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson. Humanity might seem weak individually, but they were collectively unstoppable when aroused to anger. Years later, alien species would tell their children stories about the humans who brought down the greatest empire in galactic history. All because the empire made the mistake of hurting one human and thinking it would break human resolve. They had never been more wrong about anything in their entire history. The Vorthan soldiers thought Captain Lee Woo-jin was finally broken after 3 days of torture. Commander Thelvis looked at the human lying on the metal table and smiled with satisfaction. The captain was not screaming anymore, and his eyes were closed, so the aliens believed they had won another victory against a weak species. What Thelvis did not know was that Wu Jin was not broken at all. Instead, the constant pain had taught his mind to work in new ways. The captain had spent the last day studying everything around him while pretending to be defeated. He memorized the layout of the ship, the guard rotations, and the security systems. The Vorthons had made many mistakes during the torture sessions. They talked freely in front of him, thinking he was too hurt to understand. They left equipment running that showed him how their technology worked, They even left him alone sometimes, believing he was too weak to move. During the torture, Wu Jin had learned that the Vorthon ship worked on a day and night cycle just like many planets. The aliens needed rest periods when most of the crew would sleep, and only a few guards would stay awake. This was when he would make his move late in the ship's night cycle when the corridors were dark and quiet. Wu Jin opened his eyes. The torture machine was still humming next to him, but he had learned to ignore the pain. The straps that held him to the table were strong, but they were designed for aliens who could not dislocate their own bones. Wu Jin took a deep breath and pulled his right shoulder out of its socket. The pain was incredible, but it was nothing compared to what the Vorthons had done to him. His arm became loose enough to slip through the strap. He did the same, with his left shoulder biting his tongue to keep from making noise, moving like a ghost. Wu Jin rolled off the table and crept toward the ventilation shaft in the corner of the room. He had watched the Vorthons use these shafts to move equipment. Around the ship, the aliens were too big to crawl through them, but humans were smaller and more flexible. The journey through the ventilation system was like crawling through a metal maze. Wu Jin had to move very slowly to avoid making noise. His dislocated shoulders screamed with pain every time he pulled himself forward, but he forced his body to keep moving. He followed the path he had memorized during his torture sessions. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the New Seoul, the human crew was trying to stay awake. Park Min-ho was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Kim So-man was staring at the screen that showed their captain's empty torture chamber. Choi Dae-hyun was sitting quietly, but his hands were clenched into fists. "Where is the human?" Elvis demanded when he discovered the empty restraints. His red eyes blazed with anger as he stared at the broken straps. "Search every room on this ship, find him now." The Vorthon soldiers ran through the corridors with their weapons ready, but they were looking in all the wrong places. Wu Jin had reached the detention area where his crew was being held. He dropped down from the ceiling like a spider, surprising the single guard who was supposed to be watching the prisoners. The alien barely had time to turn around before Wu Jin wrapped his arm around the guard's neck. The guard was much stronger than Wu Jin, but the captain had learned something important during his torture. The Vorthons were used to fighting with weapons and technology. They did not expect close combat with someone who had nothing left to lose. Wu Jin squeezed until the guard fell unconscious, then took his weapon and keys. Captain Kim So-min whispered as Wu Jin appeared at their cell door. "We thought you were broken. We saw what they did to you." Her voice was full of tears and amazement. "Humans do not break," Wu Jin replied as he unlocked the cell. His voice sounded different now, harder and colder. "We adapt, we learn, we survive." He handed weapons to his crew members and led them toward the docking bay where the New Seoul was being held. The escape through the Vorthon ship was like a deadly dance. Wu Jin moved with perfect timing, using the guard rotations he had memorized to avoid detection. When they had to fight, he struck with brutal efficiency using improvised weapons and the ship's own systems against the crew park. Min-ho watched in amazement as his captain, who still bore fresh torture wounds, systematically disabled guards twice his size. Wu Jin moved like he could predict where each enemy would be before they knew it themselves. The other crew members followed him with growing confidence. "We need to reach the New Seoul quickly," Wu Jin said as they moved through the corridors. "I have given us a surprise that will not last long." During his crawling through the ventilation system, he had done more than just escape. He had sabotaged several key systems, including the main reactor. When they reached the docking bay, 2 Vorthon guards were waiting for them, but Wu Jin was ready. He threw a piece of metal to distract them, then attacked from the side using moves he had learned from watching how the aliens moved during his torture. The guards fell quickly and quietly. The crew ran to their ship and Wu Jin immediately started the engines. Dae-hyun set a course for Earth, while Min-ho prepared the hyperspace drive. So-man tried to contact other human ships to warn them about the Vorthons. The New Seoul detached from the alien vessel and began moving away. Thelvas finally found them on the bridge of his ship, screaming orders at his remaining crew. "Destroy that human ship immediately," he commanded. "Fire all weapons. Do not let them escape." But when his weapons officer pressed the firing controls, nothing happened. The sabotage that Wu Jin had done during his escape was more complete than anyone realized. He had not just damaged random systems, he had specifically targeted the weapons the shields, and the main reactor. The Vorthan ship was slowly dying from the inside and no one had noticed yet. "Captain, what did you do?" Park Minho asked as he watched the alien ship on their rear sensors. "I taught them the same lesson." "They tried to teach me," Wu Jin replied. 3 days of pain. Just as the new soul jumped into hyperspace, the Vorthan warship exploded behind them. The reactor that Wu Jin had sabotaged finally overloaded, taking Commander Thelvas and his entire crew with it. The explosion lit up space like a new star. Kim Soman stared at the screen in shock. "Captain, you destroyed their entire ship. How did you know how to do that?" "During the torture, I had time to think," Wu Jin said as he set their course for Earth. "I learned their language by listening to them talk. I studied their technology by watching them use it. I memorized their procedures by observing their routines. They thought pain would break me, but instead, it taught me everything I needed to know." The crew looked at their captain with new understanding. This man who had been taken for torture 3 days ago was not the same person who had just led them to freedom. Something had changed in him, something that made him more dangerous than the aliens had ever imagined. "Course for Earth. Maximum speed," Wu Jin ordered, but his tone made it clear this was not a retreat. The Vorthans had made a terrible mistake. They had shown humans what they were capable of, and now Earth would know exactly what kind of enemy they were facing as the new soul raced through hyperspace toward home. Wu Jin began planning. The torture had taught him how Vorthans thought, how they fought, and how they could be defeated. He had learned their weaknesses, and now he would teach those lessons to every human in the galaxy. The war was about to begin, and the Vorthan Empire had no idea what they had awakened.